Today's show is brought to you by Bruce Fine Construction. If you can't find the house to buy, maybe it's time to build your house. Bruce built my home, and I know he can build your home too. Check him out today at brucefineconstruction.com or call at 570-362-1185. Today's episode is brought to you by Pillar to Post Home Inspectors. Don't buy a home without getting it inspected. You need to use a home inspector you can trust, and that's why I recommend Eric Rubin at Pillar to Post Home Inspectors. If you're buying a home, call the Rubin team today at 570-438-1010. This episode is brought to you today by Whitehall Mortgage. Where there's a will, there's a Whitehall. Buying a home starts by getting a pre-approval, and nobody does it better than Doug in Dallas. Call them today at 570-562-7505 or apply online at whitehallmortgagefinancial.com. Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Wychuck. I'm the host of the Real Estate Right Now podcast. And on today's episode, I think we have a topic that is very hot button. It's something that if you've been paying any attention at all, you know how serious a problem this is, and that is finding affordable housing. It's a problem almost everywhere in the country right now. And I get asked the question frequently, you know, Dave, considering how expensive it has become to buy a house, is now a good time to buy? So we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to give you my ideas and my thoughts on it, and you could see what you think as well. But finding affordable housing, it's become increasingly difficult, right? I think we can all agree that it's kind of a double whammy situation for homebuyers right now, especially first-time homebuyers, where not only are you facing a rapid increase in the price of homes, but you're also up against a rapid increase of the interest rate, right? I know in our neighborhood, prices have practically doubled. Interest rates have more than doubled. So the cost of owning a home has gotten, in some cases, almost unattainable for people. One challenge with that is, along with the increase in the cost of finding homes to buy, the cost of rent has nearly doubled in our area. And I know there's other parts of the country where they're feeling the similar type things. So the question that I get asked all the time, because affordable housing is so challenging, is now a smart time to buy? And to that I say probably yes. It's almost definitely yes if you're in an area where you could buy a single family home and the mortgage payment on that single family home would be similar or less than what rent would be on that single family home. If you're in a market where owning and renting, the costs are similar, I can't think of a scenario where it wouldn't be appropriate to buy, because you have to pay to live. I mean, unless you're fortunate enough to have a home that you've inherited, or if you're a young person, maybe you're still living with your parents. But if you want to, if you're paying rent, you're paying a mortgage. It's just not your own, right? So if you're paying to live somewhere, I always think it's a good idea to pay your mortgage instead. So one of the biggest mistakes, and why I say it's probably still a great time to buy, or it's still a time to buy, is that I think one of the biggest mistakes people could make is never try to time the real estate market. It's just so challenging, right? And I have people that work in finance, and they say the same thing about the stock market. Never try to time the market. The people who try to time the market, they're the ones who usually get hurt the worst. I'll give you an example. I sold a house to a young couple in Wilkes-Barre, it's the largest city in Luzerne County here in northeastern Pennsylvania. Sold a couple a house. It was 2014. It was a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom home for $46,000. Pretty crazy to think that you could buy a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath home 10 years ago for $46,000. Not only was the house $46,000, they bought it with an FHA loan. All we had to do was paint some chipping paint in the basement and on the outside handrails and things like that. And this thing was essentially move-in ready. They sold that house 6 years later in 2020, post-pandemic, for $105,000. So they sold it for more than double. And I remember at the time, people were telling me, Dave, it's great for them, but what about for the people who just bought this house for $105,000? they're going to get killed, right? It's going to work out poorly for them because obviously these prices are going to go down. But the truth of the matter is today, that house that sold in 2020 for $105,000, today it's probably worth $150,000. So imagine if 2020, you were waiting for the price of that home to drop. Well, now the value's gone up $45,000. The interest rates have gone up a couple points. And that house that you might have been able to afford in 2020, you can't afford it anymore in 2024. I'll give you another example. I bought a townhouse near where my wife and I built our house. We put our mother-in-law into that townhouse because she helps out with the kids, coming home from school, or if I'm at work doing something. So it's nice to have her within walking distance of our home. But I bought that townhouse 3 years ago. It was May of 21. I paid $140,000 for it. And a townhouse in that same exact neighborhood, they're all the same. They're all exactly the same. They're 1,220 square feet, 3 beds, 1.5 baths. Every single one is the same. I just bought it 3 years ago for $140,000, and one just across the other side of the circle got listed this week for $200,000. Certainly glad I didn't wait until now to try to buy that house. I'll be honest, if I were looking to buy today, I probably wouldn't buy that house, not at that price point. So it worked out pretty well for me because I didn't try to time the market. I just jumped, and that's why it worked. And, as I said, we built our house about 3 years ago. There was a person who bought a lot across the street from us. She used one of our realtors to buy it. And she asked me, she said, when are you going to start to build? And I said, well, as soon as I'm able, I'm going to start building. And at the time, it was post-pandemic. The cost of lumber had really started to rise. And she said, I'm going to wait for these lumber prices to go down. And then when they go down, that's when I'm going to start my build. Well, fast forward a year later, the price of lumber had continued to go up. And when I locked in at a 3.6 interest rate, a year after that, they were in the 6s. Now, in some cases, they're in the 7s. And Lot 4 still sits vacant today across the street from me because the person who bought it could no longer afford to build. So I think timing the market is a real disaster. So is now the time to buy, even though affordability is a problem? Yes, if you can afford it, without question, I think you should buy. And the fact of the matter is, using the examples that I talked about, 5 years from now, you're going to wish you bought today. It's just, that has been the course of the housing market in the United States pretty much for the last century. If you bought something and you could hold it for at least 5 years, 99% of the time it's going to be worth more than what you purchased it. And if you're fortunate, it could be worth significantly more than what you purchased it for. So that's going to give you an opportunity to tap into equity, maybe sell the house, use that money. So if you could afford it, without question, you should buy. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, I know affordable housing is a challenge, but I always say if you can afford your mortgage payment in year one, you should buy, because you have a 30-year fixed rate. And if you're an ambitious person and you have a good job, which you probably have to have a pretty solid income in order to purchase a home, there's a good chance that as you progress in your career, you're going to continue to make more and more money. But if you fix in your payment for 30 years, as long as you could afford that first year, in theory, each year after that, paying your mortgage should get a little bit easier as time passes. And the fact is, rent is always going to go up with the market. So I think when we talk about affordable housing, I know it's a serious issue. I know it's incredibly challenging, especially for first-time home buyers. But if there is a way for you to get into a home that you could afford, I still think it's a great time to do exactly that. So good luck in your home search. And if there's anything we could ever do to help, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks for joining us for today's episode, everybody. If you want to hear more content, follow us at Real Estate Right Now Pod on YouTube. Once you're there, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. And if you want to follow me directly, check me out. It's Dave Wychak at Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, all the socials that you're already using.